Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live on this Wednesday here from the truly balmy hills of Pond Boss World Headquarters in North Texas. 79 degrees today, December the what, 9th? No, it's not. It's June. No, wait, maybe it is. Holy cow, it was warm today. So you know what we did? We seined fish today. And if you've never seined a pond in shorts in December, at least it was 79 degrees. It was really fun though. We caught a bunch of bluegill. I've got out here behind the office, we've got 6 hatchery ponds, and I've got those things stocked up with bluegills so that we can raise bluegills to stock your ponds. So anyway, we got all kinds of good stuff today. I haven't counted them because we just brought them up. I got to sort through them, because there's probably, I know there's 4 different sizes. There's some bluegills about that big, some about like that, and quite a few like that. So I got to go through them, sort them out, and take a look. I see Travis Smith. I got a great email from Travis earlier. I love his passion about what he's doing, about it, the way he's living his life and going on. There's Blair Ulrich. Blair, I think I found an email from you today, that was sent several weeks ago. I'm pretty sure that's you. If that is, I'm going to go find that. Leanne told me about it today. Somehow I missed it. But I will check it out. Let's see here. You guys, hey, you know the drill. You're already doing it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Tim Stewart's probably wearing his right now. And a Pond Boss mug that knows how to, say it with me, keep hot things hot and cold things cold. We don't know how it knows, but it knows. So if you do that so we can continue to build an audience, that would be deeply appreciated. Blair, I will, you and I need to communicate, because as what I read was you guys, I just kind of glanced at it today, where you guys bought some property or partnered with somebody that's got some ponds on it. So I will hunt you down and we'll talk about that. I see David Schneiderman. David Schneiderman is one of our sponsors here at Pond Boss on this show with Easy Docks of Texas, them and Purina Mills, that makes best fish food on the planet, and Texas Hunter Products sponsor this show. So I appreciate it. Michael Gray checking in. John Funk, Vito, Tony Sutton, Danny Mack. Holy cow, we got people everywhere. Let's see here. We got, everybody knows Travis. Kim Moore's checking in from Illinois. Tim Stewart, did you find the pond with those 200 yet? Well, we sang that one twice, but we sang number 5 today, and I bet you, I don't really know, but I bet we got 10,000 little bluegill about that big, maybe more than that, and we only got a percentage of what was in the pond because it wasn't that good of a pull. Probably got a couple thousand medium-sized ones, and I bet 700 or 800, maybe 1,000 big bluegill, and that's out of a half-acre pond. So if you guys want to do that, you can. Now today I want to talk about building a pond. So and I tell you what, I'm getting a lot of inquiries about building ponds. So I'm going to take you through that process. Yeah, Danny, that water was cold. Now it really wasn't as bad as I thought, because I was able to stand in it and not get numb, and I didn't wear any waders. I can't get out of the pond very good now at my age. So I just wear water socks and shorts and go do it. I won't do it tomorrow or the next day because it was 79 degrees today. That worked out pretty good. Let's see. Mike Cottrell's checking in from Palo Pinto County, Texas, out west of Dallas-Fort Worth. Still greet everybody. Tony Sutton. Vito checking in from Whitesboro. Good to see Vito Barnes. John Funk from Michigan. Michael Gray, Nashville, Tennessee area. Michael Eric, Iowa. David Schneiderman said, hello, we got you. John Funk, what was your recommendation for forage fishing in upper state New York? Story you talked about last week. Oh, you know what? I didn't get to really finish that story. Let me tell you about that. What we did up there was we created, there were a bunch of hatchery ponds that had been built but never really used properly. So we grew and hatched, we set up a jar system, and we hatched white sucker eggs. We grew white suckers, bluegills, fathead minnows, golden shiners. That was the main fish that we grew there. And then we would supplement feeding some of the larger bass with tiger trout, which was kind of interesting. Mark Cornwell, our good friend, fish professor who writes for Pond Boss, he teaches at SUNY Cobleskill, and just outstanding program there. Well, part of their projects, they have a hatchery where they grow tiger trout, which is a hybrid cross. And so we would buy those at whatever price they wanted, and which was for up there pretty fair price. And we would buy them at 6 to 9 inches long and put them in the lakes to feed the bass that were 3.5 to 4 pounds or bigger. That worked out pretty good. So anyway, what we did though is we rounded up about 30 hatchery ponds that ranged in size from 1/10 of an acre to 1/2 an acre. Each one of those sat beside in a series like fish hatcheries do, right beside each fishing lake. So we would raise fish that we could just seine, count, handle, and put straight into that fishing lake. And that's how we did it. Now sometimes we'd take them from over here at the lodge pond and take them to another pond over here, to stock them to feed bigger fish. But we grew thousands of pounds of bait fish doing that. Scott Angelico says, are Christmas trees great for cover stacked on top of each other, or just some scrub oaks? Here, I'll give you the straight skinny on that. Christmas trees last no more than 8 years underwater. Now, they'll last up to 8 years if you'll have them standing up. If you put them in piles, the piles collapse, the needles fall off, the small twigs decompose within about 2 years. By about year 3, the small branches are gone. And by about year 5, all that's left is the trunk and the main limbs, which is pretty much virtually useless. I think the best way to go with Christmas trees is to put them in 5-gallon buckets, concrete them in, put them in clumps, 4 or 5 Christmas trees together in the same place standing up. They'll last longer that way. Scrub oaks last a lot longer because they're hardwood. They don't decompose underwater nearly as quick. Denver Dave, Ohio. There's Fred Bingaman. Good to see Fred. Good to see Fred. Great to see Fred. Tony Sutton, we were able to get 10,000 3 to 5 inch copper nose for our new lake. Should we stock fatheads now with them, or wait until spring and stock them before the fingerling bass? Do it now if you can. And I'm not sure where you are, Tony. I'm not sure where you are. If you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, go ahead and get the fathead minnows in there, because when you get a few bluebird days in January, February, March, those fatheads will go ahead and spawn, and they're really going to be the ones to give the best impetus to grow, give your first year and a half's growth to your bass anyway. So I'd go ahead and get them. Scott Sumner checking in. Yeah, God bless Texas, Oklahoma. Tony, you know what? I'd go ahead and get fathead minnows in there in Oklahoma. You bet. I see Frank James, Dave Weber. Good to see you guys. See who else we got. I don't want to miss anybody. So what I thought I'd talk about today is we've had an inordinate number of inquiries from people that are buying rural property. And I'm going to take you through several real-world examples that are going on right now. I got a call from a guy 2 days ago, and he's spotted a piece of property with a brand new house on it. I don't know, probably 30 acres. And he and his wife, it's about an hour away from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and they want to use it for a weekend getaway. And there's a lot of that going on right now. A lot of folks wanting to buy property in the country. Well, there's no pond on it, so he called me and said, hey, I'd like you to just investigate and see. It's near Whitewright, Texas. Merry Christmas, Steve Lewis. Good to see you. And so first thing I did was find the property on Google Earth and look at it and see what it looks like. And about 2/3 of it's wooded. And I know that country over there near Whitewright, Texas. It's black land, gummy, somewhat clay soils sitting on top of a big, thick crust of limestone, real chalky limestone. And so as I started digging around a little bit, looking at the place, I looked at the topography of it, and there's an area just outside the floodplain where you could probably build a 1 acre pond. So I said, what are your goals? He says, well, I just want the kids to be able to splash around in the pond, maybe grow a few fish that we can catch and eat from time to time, but I really want some koi, some Japanese koi. So, and that's, and when I'm talking to people, the more I know the goals, if I know what we're shooting for and where we can start, it's easier to make a game plan to get from there to here. So anyway, I looked at it, and I called a longtime friend over there that's been in the earth moving business. I bet you he's knocking on the door of 80, and I met him 40 years ago. And he's probably built most of the ponds in that area. So I called him and I said, hey, Jackie, what about this address? He says, don't build a pond there. Don't do it. And I said, okay, well, talk to me. Why not? He said, because there's not enough dirt. He said, it sits right on top of that crust of chalk, and we'd have to pound through the chalk, and I don't know that there'd be enough dirt. And I said, well, what if he's adamant? He said, just tell him not to do it. And I said, well, let's just say he did. What would it take? He said, you'd have to money whip it. We'd have to go bring in some clay or put in a liner and, shape it. And he says, I know that spot. In the house they built, the house pad, they had to pound a hole in the ground and get rock and crush it because they couldn't get enough dirt to build a house pad. I said, okay, that speaks. So I called the guy back and I said, you know what? I don't think it's going to make good sense to build the pond, but he could, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. He said, well, what would a 1 acre pond over there cost? I said, it's going to cost $70,000 plus, depending on what he has to do to break through the rock and what he's going to have to do to line it. And so he said, you know what? I'd like to meet with him and let him look at it and see. So to this man, having that 1 acre pond that his kids can splash in, I think he's probably trying to compare it to a swimming pool. For the kind of swimming pool he wants, probably less money. It's less than a bass boat. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it could make sense. Now, I had two other guys that had bought land in Oklahoma where they bought it so they could hunt and fish. So the here's if you want to build a pond, I'm going to tell you what you need to do first. Spend some time on aerial photographs and study the site. Also, if you have the program called MapRight, you can switch views from like Google to an old topographical map, a new topographical map. There's about 8 or 10 different choices of maps you can look at. But if you can find the site and then look at the topography, then you can figure out how big the watershed is. So job number one, is figure out how big is the watershed in that area. So that was going to tell you about how big of a pond you can build. Now, the next thing you're doing is you're looking for where those contour lines move to where you can see water flows through a certain area. And if it's a blue line stream, you'll see a dotted, broken blue line going right across that topo map. But the first thing you do is measure the size of the watershed. Then looking at the map, then you look at a spot to put a dam. I looked at some maps for a piece of property today for a fella, and the property's L-shaped. It's got the long arm of the L, then it turns. Right there where in the long arm, there's one spot that he can build a lake that would be 4.5 or 5 acres up to 9 acres. But the watershed's 150 acres. So 150 acres drains that site. So one of the things you can do, remember the math here. 1 acre, write this down. You got a big cheap tablet and a Crayola, write it down. 1 acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons. So in this part of Oklahoma, the average annual rainfall exceeds 42 inches. So about 2/3 of that is going to be runoff coming off of some of its agricultural land, some of its forest. So you can actually calculate the volume of water that you could expect during a normal, whatever that means. What's normal now? Nobody knows what normal is. There is no normal. 2020 normal? No. Or average annual rainfall? All you can do is go back and look at, the last 30 to 50 years of rainfall and get an idea. Of course, that doesn't account for droughts, doesn't account for floods. It's whatever's average. So 1 acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons. So you can run the numbers off of a 150 acre watershed. So in that part of the world, a 150 acre watershed would easily support a 15 to 18 acre lake. Well, the site that he wants to build on, he can't back water up on somebody else's property. And if he could, then he could build an 18 acre lake. But 4 acres of that would be on the neighbor. So he's looking at something between 4.5 or 5 acres up to 8 acres. And that's the case. The next thing is, what kind of dirt do you have? Once you know the watershed, Then you got to figure out what kind of dirt you got. You got clay, you got sand, you got rock. You know, heck, I'm sitting here talking about this, and Michael Gray, that guy, he got more rock hammers for his equipment than a carpenter's got in his handbag, his tool bag. You know, and so you got to know what kind of soil you got. Now, you can read soil maps, you can talk to the NRCS, but until somebody gets out there and starts digging some holes, you really don't know. You may have 6 inches of topsoil sitting on top of a big band of clay that sits on top of gravel. You know, or you may have 0 topsoil, a layer of rock, cut through that layer of broken rock, go down 3 feet, and there's 10 feet of clay. You don't know. You know, so you got to find that out. So you got to get down there and see what kind of dirt you got. You got to have, here's one of Mike Otto's rules of thumb I learned from Mike. Mike says that you got to have at least 30% clay with a high plasticity that can be compacted. Now, you can't use too much clay because it expands and contracts with moisture. You know, so Mike likes 30 to 40% clay content in the soil. And soil just doesn't show up like that. So what Mike's taught me is that he will take and mix those soils together, pulverize them. He calls it processing the dirt. And then when he's ready to build the dam, then he's putting that processed dirt that's rolled and pulverized and broken up into 6-inch lifts. Then they compact it with a sheep's foot roller or a scraper or those big off-road heavy dump trucks, something like that can compact. So job 1, watershed. Job 2, what kind of dirt you got. Then the next thing while you're going through that process is you're looking at the best sites to put a dam. You want to put a dam the shortest distance between 2 points to impound as much water as you can. Now, if you live in Louisiana, which I'm talking to some guys there, the only way they're going to get ponds in South Louisiana is to excavate. It's flat. They got great clay, but they got to excavate. So they trade 1 yard of dirt for 1 yard of water. But if you can build a dam and back water up, much better trade-off. Costs a whole lot less money to move the amount of dirt to impound water than it does to move the dirt to capture water in an excavated pond. So, watershed, job 1. Job 2, what kind of soils? You need at least 30% clay, preferably more. You know, then job 3, site the dam. Figure out the best place for the dam. You want the dam to be sited between two points. You want to tie it into a hill over here and a hill over here. That's what you want to do. The next thing is, as you're looking at that site, it's probably going to be a creek bed or a wash or a eroded gully, something like that. You got to be able to put the dam on a solid foundation. If you don't have a good, it's the dam. Look at it like this. The dam is a structure, and you're going to build that structure on a good foundation. If you don't have a good foundation, it's not going to work. The dam can blow out from the bottom. It will seep. It won't set right. You know, so you got to build what's called a core trench. You got to dig out and get rid of any bad soils. You know, if you're in a creek bottom, if you think about it, what's in the bottom of most creeks? Gravel and sand, right? So the next thing is once you site the dam, you got to clear it, get the topsoil out of the way, store it for later, dig a core trench. And that core trench is going to be your underground barrier to prevent water from seeping under the dam, and you're going to have a foundation to build the dam on. And then when the dam is built, it's built properly. Now there's different ways to build a dam, but I'm going to tell you that the ways that I've seen it done by so many contractors that works the best is they build the core trench by digging a hole, basically a big long ditch, packing it full of clay, walking it in, compacting it, and then come up. And then once they get back up to natural ground level, then they got the foot of the dam, 3-to-1 slope on the inside, at least a 3-to-1 slope. You don't want it much less than that or much more than that. If it's 2-to-1, it's going to slough. If it's 4-to-1, you're going to get vegetation issues in the pond. So 3-to-1 on the inside where the water is going to be, and 3-to-1 on the backside, and get it even softer if you can, if you don't mind spending the money on moving the dirt. So 4-to-1, you can drive a tractor down it and be pretty comfortable. 3-to-1, And then I'm not real comfortable driving a tractor, not sideways. You can go up and down, but you gotta have the right kind of tractor and be confident in what you're doing. So the slope's got to be good. So now, job one is all the things that's engineering, designing, and building the dam because it's a structure. Its job is to impound water and then release excess water in an orderly fashion. That's a dam's job. Now, inside that dam, once the bulldozers are gone, the scrapers have done their job, excavators are finished, and the earth mover gets his check, you're going to live with it. Behind that dam is a living, breathing entity that's going to be your lake or your pond. And that's where I get to come in a lot, is to come help that landowner make sure that what's behind the dam is going to meet their goals. You know, and one of the things I look for in the basin of a lake is I want to be sure that the slopes are good, that there's minimal amounts of shallow water. You know, especially if it's going to be a fishing lake. If it's a fishing lake, we want to minimize the shallow water. If it's going to be a duck hunting lake, maximize the shallow water. So the goals of that landowner is going to dictate what we do inside the basin of that lake. So I'm going to pause there and go down the list, see who else we got. We got Steve Lewis saying Merry Christmas. I saw that a while ago. Good to see him. Todd Austin, Lance Fredrickson. I'm in East Texas and curious about putting some more fatheads in. The pond is a year old. It seems like the fatheads are gone. Nothing but brim and bass or less. Should I restock or just let the bluegill take over? Great question. That's a great question there, Lance. I'll tell you what it is. I'm just going to use a real-world example. I was giving a speech several years ago at a Purina dealer in Mineral Wells, Texas. And there was a guy over there real excited about his pond, and he kept interrupting me with stuff he'd done. And which, you know, it's kind of humorous. When you're giving a speech, you kind of got your thoughts in order. You're going down a road for him to listen to and hear. And he interrupted me 4 or 5 times and asking questions and telling what he did. And he was just excited to be there. And so I was talking about fathead minnows. Fathead minnows, I'm going to tell you this. Fathead minnows only really serve 2 purposes in sport fishing ponds. Purpose number 1 is they're stocked to promote the first year's growth of largemouth bass, fingerlings. That's it. And after about 18 months, they're supposed to be gone. Because when you stock them without bass present, they're going to reproduce prolifically. The babies are going to start having babies in 90 to 120 days, you know, while the bluegill are beginning to spawn. So the fathead minnow's job is to jumpstart newly hatched largemouth bass. The second role that they play is as a supplementary food like in a catfish pond. Well, here's what this guy did. He bought a place, 3-acre pond on it. His bass were crowded, overcrowded, stunted, weren't growing. So he said, you know what, I need to feed those fish. So in giving the speech, I told everybody, you know, it takes about 10 pounds of bait fish for a bass to gain 1 pound. So as I'm talking along, he raised his hand, and I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I got a 3-acre pond and my bass are crowded. And he said, I bought 100 pounds of fathead minnows and put them in there. So was that a good thing to do? And I said, well, why are you asking me that? And he said, well, I just heard you say that it takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a bass to gain 1 pound. And I said, that's right. He said, well, I put 100 pounds in there. So are you telling me that 100 pounds of fathead minnows is going to grow 10 pounds of bass? I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Because they're not going to have the chance to reproduce. They're slow moving. They live in the same niche as bass and bluegill. They're going to get eaten and they're not going to get a chance to establish. So they're going to be gone because that's their job. And he said, so if I have in my 3-acre pond, if I've got 500 bass and they're going to gain 10 pounds, he said, that wasn't a good buy, was it? And I said, no, it's you spent $1,000, didn't you? He said, yes, I did. I said, well, the next few bass you eat them by candlelight because they cost a lot. So then his follow-up question was, what would you have done with that $1,000? I said, I'll tell you exactly what I would have done. I would have spent $850 on a Texas Hunter feeder, and then I'd have bought, $150 worth of Purina Aquamax 500 or 600 or now MVP. Feed your bluegills. If you'll feed your bluegills, their job is to provide the backbone of the food chain for bass lakes. So here's your answer, Lance. Don't stock any fathead minnows. feed your bluegills. Make sure your bass don't get overcrowded. Weigh and measure some fish as you go. And when you see your growth rates start to level off, start culling a few bass. Now, don't do that until you're at least, let's say your pond is a year old. So don't start culling any bass until the end of year 3. Wait till then. But in the meantime, start catching some bass, weigh them and measure them, and see what's going on. Michael Eric and I, would almost everyone preaches fathead minnows and new waters. I'm game. What's your thoughts? And also introducing golden shiners, fathead minnows and brand new waters. Yes, golden shiners. Golden shiners are predator fish, limited by their mouth size. They're also nest raiders. So I tell you where I like golden shiners. I like golden shiners where there's quite a bit of open water, and the bass have a tendency to overpopulate, because they can help by eating some baby bass and some bass eggs, things like that. So they're actually predators. They reproduce once a year. They can survive predation simply because they're fast. Fathead minnows are not. So shiners, I don't like to recommend those unless I know more about that body of water. Fathead minnows, I recommend those into every brand new pond there is, as long as there are no predator fish in it. Dave Weber, curious on how you estimate the percentage of runoff you will get, knowing the average rainfall in the watershed area. It depends on what the rain's falling on. Like over there, not far from you, Dave, over there in, I guess south of you, over there in the Flint Hills, there's a lot more water running off the Flint Hills of Kansas than there is coming off the farmland just to your southeast. So farmland is going to run off less. Forests are going to run off some. We're going to run off more than ag land is. And rocky terrain and steep terrain is going to run off the most. But if you know the surrounding watershed and what it is, then you can be fairly accurate about what the volume of runoff is going to be. And plus, it's a little subjective, because if you get a 10-inch rain on moist soils, it's going to run off. But if you get a 3-inch slow rain over 3 days and it hadn't rained in 2 months, none of that's going to run off. So the NRCS publishes information for each county in the nation, where they can give you an idea of the average annual rainfall and the volume of runoff based on the terrain that it falls on. My poor little throat. I haven't been talking much. It does it every freaking Wednesday. Justin Slocum, I'm in East Texas between Henderson and Carthage. I have 3 otters cruising our 25-acre lake. I've been told we need to take out 500-plus bass in a year. My question is, should I leave the otters, since I haven't had time to remove as many fish as suggested? See more. Okay, well, I'm going to give you this answer here, Justin. The problem with otters, and look at there, Travis beat me to it. The otters are not going to say, hey, they're going to say, hey, guys. They're going to say, hey, Justin, which fish do you want me to eat? And the fish that you want cold are those 10 to 14-inch cookie cutter carbon copy bass from there to there. That's what you want to be gone. And they are going to be a little more picky about eating the bigger fish, especially when the water gets cool like it is now and the bass are sluggish. It's not unusual for an otter to catch a 4-pound bass, take it to your dock, climb up on the dock, chew the guts out of it, and leave the rest of it so you can see it and be proud of what they did for you. So I tell you what, I would. Here's what I would do. I would get rid of the otters and pray for cormorants. Water turkeys are a lot better at culling fish that size than otters are. Otters really are more picky they really do want to eat your bigger fish. So there's Wyatt checking in from Colorado with the place. Hey, you know what, Wyatt? I'm going to be in Abilene Friday watching my grandson play football Friday afternoon. Gunner Tigers are in the semis against Canadian, and they're going to play at 4 o'clock Friday, and I'm going to be over there watching them in Abilene at Shotwell Stadium. Let's see here. Looks like you're out of the doghouse. Yeah, I'm not in the cabin. I'm back up in the office. I've kind of avoided the office in the last couple of weeks. We're late, but we'll go back and watch the beginning. Okay, yeah, no, my wish for Christmas that yours is yours. That's our print. hoping for a Christmas miracle. Huh. Thank you very much. Let's see here. There's Ron Arduin, Jake Hughes, Craig Gutman. All right, looks like we're going otter hunting this weekend. Hey, you know what? Check the laws as well. I don't want to sit here and tell you to break a law. Find out what you can, what you can't do. There's Shane McIntyre. Merry Christmas. Okay, now I'm going to circle back to the, there comes another question. Craig Guffin. I've seen small ponds on the front side of the dams, the bigger ponds. Is there a purpose for that? Small ponds on the front. Yeah. Most of the time, those ponds on the downstream side of a dam, there's two reasons for those. Number one, the biggest reason is those are designated wetlands to attract waterfowl. It's very common for landowners, that love to fish, also love to hunt waterfowl or just preserve waterfowl. So they'll build a little artificial wetland adjacent to the dam downstream where they can just gravity flow water and flood it and keep it flooded during duck season. The second reason is sometimes there's ponds down there because the dam leaks and the guys want to collect the water so they can pump it back in the lake. I've seen that happen a number of times. Ron says, let me just skip that. Jeff Thompson purchased an alkalinity test kit from reading a Pond Balls magazine article. When would you test the water and what's the range you're looking for? Jeff, I would test that water in January, then I would do it again in April, and then I would do it again in the middle of summer. Now, and I'll tell you what, first of all, your range, you want it to be at least 40 parts per million total alkalinity up to about 150 or 160. Now, if it's higher than that, that's not a bad thing. It's just that the higher the alkalinity gets, the harder it is to do things like fertilize it, and it's going to grow more plants, things like that. 40 parts per million is really what you want. Now, in January, with all things being equal, in January, your alkalinity is naturally going to be higher than it will be in July because a lot of that calcium carbonate, which is the alkalinity, total alkalinity measurement, is going to be utilized in plants and fish and insects, crustaceans, things like that. So some of the alkalinity is gleaned from the water and used in the biology of reproduction, of growth rates, and like Cara is notorious for because it's got an exoskeleton that's calcium carbonate, so it can impact the alkalinity. So your alkalinity is going to be different in the summer than it is going to be in the wintertime. Ron Ardoin says, how many bass is sufficient to tag? Can you tag every fish that's healthy and at its standard weight? Yeah, you can tag as many. Now, there's two reasons to tag a bass. One is to track individual growth rates of that bass. The other one is to get an idea of the population number. So let's say, for example, you decide you're going to tag 20 bass. So you catch 20 bass, you weigh them, measure them, write the date down, put a tag in them, write down the number of the tag. Now you've got individual links and weights and date on and tag number for that each of those fish. And so then you go out and you give it 4 or 5 days and you go fishing and you catch 100 bass and 10 of them have tags. And you know how many you started off with, so you can extrapolate how many bass that you've got based on your return rate when you're catching them back. So if the mission is to study individual growth rates, and to study the aggressive behavior of that individual fish. If you catch one, tag it, and never see it again, that tells you something. If you catch one and you tag it and you catch it 15 more times the next 2 years, that tells you something else. And if that fish isn't growing, that tells you something else. So that's the main reasons to do that. Okay, Jerry's checking in from Oregon. Happy holidays. Thank you very much. Have not found anybody to trap your beavers, so I'm going to have to shoot them. You're going to get one shot, Jerry. I'm going to tell you this. Beavers, they don't like being shot at. So you're going to get one shot to hit those beavers. The other thing you can do is learn how to set conibear traps. Now, conibear traps are dangerous. You can break your arm with a conibear trap. But there's got to be somebody around there that can teach you how to trap beavers because it's really not that hard. I even learned how to do it, and I'm a fish guy. Okay, so here's where it's going. I see, wish my book was in print. Well, I wish my book was in print too. It's finished. I'm picking out pictures. Just ain't got to it yet. Got too much stuff to do. All right, so now, let's see. It's a little after 7. Let's pause for a minute. And I want to say thanks to David Schneiderman, Easy Dock of Texas, for their sponsors of this show. I want to thank Texas Hunter Products. And you know what? If you get a minute, go to the Texas Hunter website. Go to TexasHunterProducts.com. They've got some cool stuff. They've got fish feeders, wildlife feeders, deer blinds. They've got road feeders. You know, if you've got a hunting ranch and you want to feed the deer so they'll come out on the road and you watch them, they've got things like that. They've got a wide variety of products, and they've got more products coming. So check them out. And Purina Mills, I've told y'all this story before. I love Purina Mills because they hunted me down back in 1995 and said, hey, we want to work with you because we see a budding niche market that's going to become an industry, and we'd like to supply products that you guys need for sport fishing ponds. And they put their money where their mouths are, and they did the work, and now we've got outstanding products. I used to stand in front of a crowd and say, you know what, this would have been about 2003 or 4 backwards. When I would stand in front of a crowd and give a speech, I'd say, you know, I probably held 10 bluegills that are 2 pounds, 10 of them. And I've probably held 50 or 100 that are 1.5 pounds to 1.75 pounds. But I've held 10,000 that are 1 pound to 1.25 pounds. You can grow 1 pound to 1.25 pounds bluegills. Well, now I can stand in front of a crowd and say, you know what, I bet you I've held 5,000 2-pound plus bluegills. Had my hands on a couple of 3-pound bluegills. And literally thousands of bluegill that are 1.5 pounds, almost 2 pounds. The only difference between now and then is the fish food. Purina's Aquamax fish food. I feed it out here, right here. And all those bluegill we caught today when we seined, that's all they've eaten for the last 6 or 8 months. And I've got, and I started off, here's what I did. I put 50 adult bluegills in that half-acre pond. 50 adults, meaning 4 to 5 inches long. I did that in March of 2019. And then I fed them through 2019, and I fed them through 2020, and now I'm harvesting. So now, I did harvest a few last year, but not many. But now I went out today and with a couple of guys, and I guarantee you, we got 10,000 baby bluegill, at least. There's probably more than that. You know, and several hundred, maybe 1,000 to 2,000, 3 to 5 inchers. And then, I don't know how many, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's 1,000 that are 5 to 7 inches long that are less than 2 years old, that are 18 months old. You know, and so those are going to go to some pretty special places so they can grow up and be as big as they can. They've had Aquamax MVP in the last 1.5 years, 2 years. So, anyway, I appreciate those 3 sponsors. We got a couple other sponsors that are talking about it. Let's see here. Ron's ready for the next Pondology. That was pretty fun, man. You got a lot out of it, didn't you? I did too. I taught it, but I got to listen to everybody there, which was huge fun. Very informative. We'll talk about that again. Oh, by the way, my wife wanted me to mention that Lusk Lodge, 2 is for sale. So if you guys are looking for that weekend retreat or that place to move out in the country and homestead, our place is for sale. Now, before you fall out of your chair, I'm 65, Debbie's 68. We knew at some point we'd want to sell that place. But, you know, we didn't know when. And we got to talk to our financial advisor, and he says, you know what? You're right at the peak of the market right now. Before the election, you know, people are escaping the city. They want to go to the country, stay away. Social unrest. Their restaurants are closed. You know, the kids aren't going to school. You know, they can't go shopping. So people are wanting to escape, and they're buying places in the country. So we put our place on the market. And if for anybody that's interested in it, email me, boblusk@outlook.com, and I will connect you with the realtor, and she can tell you all about it. Let's see here. Doug Brown, turn off the feeders for the year. And you know what? And if we don't sell it, we'll keep living there. Doug Brown, turn off the feeders for the year. Fish backed off eating. Got American Sport Fish Hatchery F1s and Florida Pure Strain Bass stocked last Thursday. Added 15 pounds of copper nose fingerling snacks for the winter. You know what? I'm going to throw this at you, Doug. I'm not sure where you are. I don't remember. But I'm going to tell you, don't turn your feeder off yet. I'm going to tell you that between now and springtime, you're going to have 15, depending on where you are, you're very likely going to, if you've got Florida bass and F1s, that means that you've been counseled and you're you're in an area where those fish can thrive. And I'm going to tell you that I would keep feeding those fish, but I would just cut the feed way, way, way back. I would cut it back to one time a day, afternoon, for about 4 seconds. Because here's why. The best of the best and the most aggressive fish are going to want to come eat that fish food. You know, and even at 45, 46 degrees, they're not going to be moving fast, but they're going to come eat that fish food. So I'd feed it. Jacob West, Texas Hunters Great Products. Yes, they do. They just got through buying one. Got through buying one of those deer blinds. Our fish told us the other day how much they love MVP. I bet they did. South Georgia, Doug. Yep, you know what? I'd keep feeding those fish, man. Vito's dogs prefer swimming around the pond, eating the Purina Aquamax. Smells fishy, doesn't it, buddy? All right, I promised to talk more about ponds, pond construction, so I'm going to circle back on that now that it's about 10 after 7. Step 1, watershed. Step 2, dirt. Step 3, site the dam. Step 4, come up with a good construction plan. Shop contractors. Please do that. I'm watching the lake being renovated right now where the landowner picked some really great guys to dig the muck out of his pond, but they got the wrong equipment. They've got a short reach track hoe that doesn't have wide tracks. They've got off-road dump trucks that they can't back down into the pond. And the pond, even while they're getting through the silt, the bottom of that pond, the soil quivers, which means that their equipment's sinking down in it. So even though they're really, really good at what they're good at, they've kind of stepped into this big mire of mucky junk that they can't do anything with. So now they're having to change plans in the middle of a project so they don't lose money and he gets his pond fixed like he wants it. So you got to choose the right contractor. The right contractor is the one that has the experience of doing what you want, has the right equipment, will meet your timeline, and make something of a commitment on price. Now, when I say something of a commitment on the price to move the dirt, I have yet to see a pond be built where both parties were happy with a fixed price. Think about that for a minute. I've yet to see a pond built where there was a fixed price where both parties were happy. Because when that contractor bids that project, he's got to build a buffer in there. And I got Michael Gray watching this and probably Drew Hay watching this. They're both pond builders. These guys will tell you, if you make them bid that project, they're going to overshoot it a little bit. And here's why. And that's legitimate. That's legit. The other way is to pay by the hour. Now, there's no landowner out there that's going to build a dam and not really know what it's going to cost. All the good contractors can say, we think it's going to cost this much. But until they start getting down in that dirt and digging into it, they don't know. It's like these guys that are renovating that lake. They thought that muck was about 2 feet thick because they got out there with a shovel and dug in it and didn't sink up to their elbows. So they really didn't know what was going on. So when the contractor starts digging, like Michael Gray, that guy, he moves more rock than he does dirt, I think. And so when you get down, when they start moving that dirt, they're going to find things that they didn't know about, So that's why when you're doing your due diligence, you're finding out about the dirt as much as you can. You're digging test holes. You're seeing what the soils are telling you, what's under there, so you can make smart decisions and see what the timeline is going to be and do the best you can to project the cost. Here's what I tell everybody. Get that earth mover to make a semi-commitment to you. It's going to cost $50,000 to do that project. You add 25% on top of that, then you can't be mad about it. And it's not because they're going to cheat you. It's not because they're dishonest. It's just because that's the way it is. Because nobody knows what's under the ground until you dig it. I'll never forget Otto telling me about a 6-acre lake that he built. And the landowner, this was probably 30 years ago. And I actually went and watched him build some of it. But I didn't know the whole story till he was finished. But I went and saw it when he was clearing the topsoil off. And it was kind of this meadow and a kind of a swale where it was all pasture that butted up to a forest line. And right at that forest line, the landowner wanted to build a dam and back up water over about 2 or 3 acres of pond. Otto figured out that it could be bigger than that, probably 4 or 5 acres. So he projected the volume of dirt, which that's not hard to do. How much dirt are you going to move? You don't know how much dirt you're going to move under the ground until you start moving the dirt underground. So the guy was adamant about a bid. So Otto overbid it just a little bit, which is what they do. Just because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Well, Mike, when he tells the story, it's a lot funnier when he tells it, although it wasn't funny at the time. He said, Bob, I got down doing that dadgum core trench. I figured I'd go down about 4 feet. And he said, every time I went down another foot, it was gooey, mucky, silty dirt. And he said, figured out finally when I got down 13 feet and I heard the bucket on the Traco scrape metal, that something was wrong. And he dug up a fender from a Model T Ford. And come to find out, that was a farm that had been just worn out over time and eroded heavily, silted in, and somebody had come in and taken the old creek, backfilled it with trash, and then covered it up with dirt and built that hay pasture. And just leveled it all off. So he had to dig all that out to get down to where he could build a good foundation to build a dam. So the moral of the story is there's unknowns. Plan for that. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's underground until you start really digging in it. More test holes are better. Bigger projects, engineers. The more due diligence you can do with that dirt, the easier it is to get a more accurate or precise cost. So there you go. Now, once you get to that point, now you're thinking about, what am I going to do inside the basin of the lake? Let's just take, there's another guy in Oklahoma that is about a third of the way of building his dam. Now his pond is going to be shaped like a chicken foot. He's got 3 forks going up. He's got a dam right here, a big bowl, and then he's got 3 coves going back up into steep draws. The conversation we had is he wants it to be a bass fishing lake. So he said, I'm going to leave timber standing way up those coves. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. Because if you do that, how are you going to get up there in a boat? How are you going to get up there to fish it from the shore? He says, well, probably not. I said, okay. So you got some of these big old oak trees up there. And as we tried to walk up it and look, it's not going to be practical to cut down those trees because the slope is about 1-to-1 rocky outcroppings. And then there's all kinds of trees coming up through it. You can't get in there. Then when you cut the trees, you can't get them out. And if you go up there with a bulldozer and start scarring up that dirt, you're disturbing a whole lot of soil and a whole lot of rock, and you're messing up the shoreline, basically. So I don't like it, but I concur. You know what? You probably ought to leave that up. Now, here's what's going to happen. When you flood those trees and they die and your wife sees a bunch of dead trees standing up, is she going to like that? The other choice is to bring in some crews and hand cut those trees and drag them out with a skid steer. If you want to do that, leave a few. But I've never seen a fish living in the canopy of a dead tree, but I've seen a lot of water turkeys sitting there getting ready to eat your fish down in that water. So now we're talking about what's going to go on in the basin of that lake once we build it. There's a moth. Come here. So, as you're... Oh, got it. Knocked it out of the air. I don't know why I did that. I thought you'd laugh. But when you're looking at the basin of the lake, you're thinking about your goals. And, most people, it's fishing. And so... if you're going to be fishing, then you need to have the right kind of habitat. That's when we circle back into those principles that I've talked about over and over and over. Happy water, great habitat, build a food chain, superior genetics, and a harvest plan. If you've got those 5 things in your mind as you're developing a plan to create the interior of your lake, then you're going to have better success. If I say, I use this example all the time. If I said, hey, if you want to go somewhere to have a legitimate chance to catch a double-digit bass, where are you going to go? Anybody that knows anything about that says Lake Fork. Yeah, about 2.5 hours away from here. That's right. If you're going to go striper fishing, where are you going? Well, right here, Lake Texoma, 5 miles from here. Well, those fish are thriving in those environments because they have the right kind of water, the right kind of habitat, and the right kind of food chain. So if your mission is to grow largemouth bass, then you need to have the right kind of habitat, not only for the biggest bass that you're going to have growing there, but you got to have the right habitat for your food chain. You got to have spawning areas for bluegill to spawn, bass to spawn, threadfin shad, whatever species you're going to have in there. You want to create the best habitat for them to be able to reproduce, for them to congregate, hide, ambush, loaf. So all that goes on in your design plan after you've got the structure part of the dam and things figured out. So now when I'm helping somebody and I bet you I've got 12 or 15 projects in the mix right now, everywhere from one that just got completed to a guy that called me yesterday that hadn't even bought the land yet. And so your pre-planning is huge. So, big part of that pre-planning is designing the interior of the lake. And one thing I always tell people, which, I got to tell you a story. I see some more, yeah, Travis Paul Smith just gave you great advice. As a matter of fact, the guy that when I first heard this, he just bought a piece of property, and man, his learning curve is steep as well. Don't pay the dumb tax. Please do your research before spending a penny. That's the wisest comment on here about what we're talking about regarding building a pond or lake. The more homework you do, the more research you do, the more knowledge you have. I'm working with a guy, Corey Simmons. He watches this broadcast. Corey has done the best due diligence of anybody I've met yet. He has talked to 4 or 5 different contractors, found not only the contractor to build his lake, but he's got some really nice hardwoods that he just doesn't want to burn. This guy's going to log it for him, going to pay him a little bit of money for the logs, and then come in and build his dam after Corey and I are designing the interior of his lake. Something is crawling on. Boy, we got bugs everywhere today. I hadn't been up here 3 weeks. Everybody else has. So anyway, Corey has done a superior job, and it's going to pay off in the end because he's not going to have nearly the number of surprises from the earth mover. He knows what he's going to get. He's laying out a game plan. He's taking it upon himself to do his due diligence and not depend totally on consultants or earth movers or engineers. He's learned it, and he's really got it going. And I would highly recommend that anybody that's talking about building a pond or lake, you do your due diligence. Talk to the right people. Call me. I'll help you. Go to pondboss.com. Watch a bunch of these back videos. Spend time on Ask the Boss on Pond Boss. Look at, buy Otto's book, Just Add Water. That's a great book. I think I got one of those around here somewhere. Yeah, here it is right here. This book is just packed full of Otto's experiences. And I'm going to do a commercial real quick. $35 a year right here. Pond Boss Magazine. 6 times a year, $35. Cheaper than a Friday night date. And after that date's gone and done, this lasts a year. And I promise you, every issue there's a nugget in here that you can use. Matter of fact, I think this issue we've got 3 pond construction articles. We've got one by Michael Gray, talking about building his pond, and another one. And we got one about Otto that I can't remember what he wrote about. Well, hell, I'll look. Hold on a minute. Let's see, Otto's article. And then there's one in here where some folks built a pond and they described it. Yeah, Otto in this one, he's talking about the 1-day 100-year flood. That's a great article. And the January, February, he's got 3 articles about people, about pond construction. So buy Otto's book, Just Add Water, and subscribe to Pond Boss, $35 a year. Now, once you get your habitat plan figured out, here's one of the things. I work with a lot of guys and folks that are professionals like CPAs, attorneys, folks like that. They're real cut and dried, black and white. This is how it is. That ain't how it is on a pond site. You got to be fluid, because as the earth movers reveal what's under the ground, you're going to be wanting to make changes on what you're thinking about with your habitat. And we can have a conversation another time about habitat design, because it's a big deal, because you want to take into account wind direction. You want to take into account where the water flows in. You want to take into account where the water is going to flow out. So there's a whole lot to it about designing that habitat. You want to accommodate little bitty fish because it takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a bass to gain 1 pound, right? Or it takes 10 pounds of bait fish or 10 pounds of food for each trophic level to gain 1 pound. It takes 10 pounds of plankton for insects to gain a pound. It takes 10 pounds of insects for tiny fish to gain a pound. It takes 10 pounds of tiny fish to grow a pound of bigger game fish. It takes 10 pounds of bigger game fish to grow giant game fish. So you start doing all that math, you got to have the right habitat to support all these different species, all these different organisms. So, let me go down here. Stephen Martin. My pond has been dug for a few months. Do I want to wait and stock it with fatheads till spring, or can I get them established now? I'm in Kansas. I built many fish habitats and put them in. Okay, I'll tell you what, Stephen. You're in Kansas. You're not going to do any harm by stocking fathead minnows now, but in Kansas, they're not going to reproduce like they would in South Georgia or the middle of Texas, because you've already reached that lower temperature where they're just pretty well going to be dormant pretty much. So now what I would do is I'd be talking to my supplier. I don't know who you're buying your fish from, but I would put the fatheads in there by about 2 weeks after ice off, depending on what part of Kansas, which that's going to be, third or fourth week of March, probably for you. I'd put them in then. Now, if you want to do it now, it does no harm, but they're not going to do anything for you over the winter. They're not going to reproduce, not going to grow, they're not going to eat much. So, you can either let them grow in your pond or let them grow in the hatchery pond and get them in the spring. I think I'd get them in the spring. That's my story for the $6 million question. All right, let me get my little mouse thing going on over here. I'm kind of getting lost here. Let's see. Scrolling down, looking here. Have you heard from the lady in Louisiana that a company wants to build a pond for fracking? Yes, I have. I've talked to her several times, and I actually need to follow up with her. She's on my list. She's number 3 on my list. So that means I'll be talking to her tomorrow. Fred Bingaman says, Stephen, flathead, catfish, or fathead? Fred, I'm pretty sure. I presume he was talking. Oh, there he is. Minnows, yep. Robert Buckaloo, back issues available? Yes, they are. We've got, actually, if you'll go to pondboss.com, click on Ask the Boss, and the category, it's probably the second or third category from the top in the discussion forum. Each year, Bill Cody goes through every copy of Pond Boss, and he writes a short information paragraph about each issue of the magazine, what articles are in each issue. So there's archives of that. They go all the way back to 1992 that our good friend Bill Cody did. Let's see here. All right, folks, it's 7:28. So I'm going to kind of wrap up this discussion about building a new pond. And Travis said it right. Don't pay the dumb tax. It is, I can't tell you how many people, I'm going to tell you almost all people that have lived in the city don't know how to live in the country. When they go by that recreational place and they're excited about it, as they should be, they pay a dumb tax because you don't know what you don't know. And it's really, really hard not to pay the dumb tax because you don't know what you don't know. And so you've got lots of things to be looking out for. You got to find, like I've said, you got to do your due diligence on the design. You got to pick the right contractors. You got to work with the right consultants. Where you're going to get your fish. Who's going to build your fence? You're going to have a house pad. The contractor that builds the house pad says he can build the pond. Maybe so, maybe no. And so there's a whole lot of things that you got to go through. Take the time to do that, or hire somebody that will look out for you and help you do that. So there's several ways to skin that cat, but don't pay the dumb tax. Do your due diligence. I think I'm going to wrap it up with that. So, everybody says, thank you. You bet. You're welcome. Everybody, you're welcome. I appreciate the compliments. I really like doing this. It's fun. Just to kind of wrap things up, I'm going to meet with a professional videographer who knows things about podcasts and things. It's really hard to build a big audience on Facebook. I mean, I love you guys. You guys are loyal. You're here every week. We have new people each week. And depending on the topic, that the topic pretty well drives the numbers. But I do want to build a bigger audience because I do think the things that we're preaching and teaching that more people need to know about, and it's our job to be better stewards of our land and water. I think that's real important. So, and I think that's a part of the reason you guys are here. You want knowledge, you want information, and you do want to be better stewards of your land and water. So because of that, I'm going to see if there's formats and ways to do other podcasts and audio, video things, and where we could host them to where we could build better audiences, bigger audiences, and frankly, sell more subscriptions to Pond Boss Magazine. Hey, $35 a year. I got to run. It's 7:30. So thanks for tuning in, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next week. Same time. I'm probably going to be here, or if not, I'll be somewhere. Wherever I am, that's where I am. That's where we'll do it. So thanks again for watching. I'm going to hit the little finish button and say adios.